They're the ones where you actually connect with the place, the food, the people, the landscape, and the pace of life. What makes each one special, what to eat and drink there, and the travel tips that I wish someone told me before I went. By the way, welcome. I'm Hilary Zio, certified sommelier, wine book author, and restaurant owner. And here I talk about wine travel and working in the wine industry. So, first up is Burgundy, France. Okay. Burgundy is probably the most intimidating wine region on this list. But if you love Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, there's really nowhere else like it. The vineyards are tiny, the villages are unbelievably charming, and every little plot of land feels like historically important. The biggest mistake people make is assuming they can just show up and taste wine. You usually need appointment several weeks in advance, especially at smaller domains. The tasting appointments themselves are not cheap, and the wines are really some of the most expensive in the world. I would say Burgundy is number one, first on the list that I'd ever go today. So I would book one winery visit per day when you're there, have long wine fueled lunches, and stay and wander through the ancient towns, especially in Beaune, and just hit up all the wine bars there where you can taste a lot more than would be possible in a day of visiting producers. Food wise, expect butter, cheese, escargot, roast chicken, rich sauces, and gougères. I would definitely avoid the harvest season because wineries are incredibly busy. Likely, they will not take your appointments at all. Next up is Penedès in Spain. So, Penedès is one of the most underrated wine regions in Europe. Most people know it for cava, but there are also some really incredible still wines too. Hot tip, try to visit a few Corpinat wineries because these are sparkling wines made in the traditional method, but with really strict quality standards like long aging requirements, a big focus on organic farming, and a lot of the state grown fruit more than just the standard cava. It's really next level complexity. And what makes it amazing is how easy it is to combine with Barcelona. I would stay right in the Gothic quarter or a little bit out if you don't want it to be too loud or touristy, because that to me is ideal. However, or a little bit out if you don't want it to be too loud or touristy, because that to me is ideal. However, you got to watch out for pickpockets. I was there in April and I got my phone stolen right out of my hand at the market on day two. But compared to Burgundy, it's going to be way more relaxed. You can plan winery visits with just a week notice. And food wise, anchovies, tomatoes, jamon, shellfish. Next up is the Canary Islands of Spain. Now, these islands feel like another planet. There's black volcanic soil, twisted vines, Atlantic Ocean everywhere, and the wines are going to taste salty, smoky, and herbal. And this is not luxury wine travel in a traditional sense. It's really rugged, relaxed, and beachy. Each island is so different than the others. My favorite is probably Tenerife. It's so romantic, has some of the best wine I've ever tasted. It's really easy to get there too by ferry. The islands were never devastated by phylloxera the same way that Europe was, so there are incredible old ungrafted vines everywhere. Food wise, think grilled fish, the wrinkly potatoes with mojo sauce, octopus, and seafood. I would not overplan this trip. You really want to see the volcanic landscape and go on hikes or to the beach. Really, just two wineries per day. It's very unpolished. Next is the Loire Valley in France, which is probably the most diverse region on this list because you have Muscadet near the Atlantic, Sauvignon Blanc and Sancerre, Chenin and Vouvray, you've got Cab Franc and Chinon, castles and rivers everywhere, and a huge organic wine culture. It's way more approachable too, financially speaking. Food wise, goat cheese, oysters, river fish, butter sauces, and a lot of rillettes. So save time to explore all of the incredible chateaux. Many of them were built or owned by the French royalty as lavish country residences, and the scale of them is honestly hard to believe until you're there and you can see them in person. I got to see some of them in a hot air balloon, which I definitely recommend. Next is Piedmont in Italy. Piedmont might honestly be the most magical wine region in Italy, especially in the fall. The fog rolling through the vineyards, there's tiny hilltop villages everywhere, and white truffles, and some of the best wines in the world. This is where Barolo and Barbaresco come from, but honestly, the food scene is just as memorable as the wines. You're going to have Tyrene pasta with truffles, vitello tonato, rich risottos, and hazelnuts and everything. And what I love about Piedmont is that it still feels very local and authentic compared to other touristy wine regions and destinations in Europe. Now, one thing to know, rural wineries often require reservations, especially during truffle season, but that season can get very expensive. So personally, I actually prefer Piedmont in the late spring or even early summer. And while we're in Italy, Montalcino in Tuscany, the medieval mountaintop town, is going to leave you awestruck. Tuscan eateries everywhere. You'll see fortresses that date back to the 10th century BC, and this is really going to be Sangiovese at its best. So, again, tastings and bottles can get expensive relatively quickly, but it's all pretty close. So, you could do 3 wineries in a day, even. Food wise, expect bistecca, pecorino, wild boar ragu, peachy pasta, a lot of olive oil. And Tuscany is as much about atmosphere as it is wine. I remember waking up and opening the windows and just seeing this 360 views of perfectly manicured vineyards. So stay in the hilltop town of Montalcino if you can. It's not going to feel real. Next is Bulgaria, which is really one of the biggest surprises for me in wine travel as a whole. The wines are fascinating. It's a lot of indigenous grapes and ancient wine history, amazing value, just so affordable considering Western Europe. And because it's less internationally famous, the experiences feel much more personal. People are also shocked by how good the food is. I'd say it's like a mix between Turkish and Greek. There's a lot of grilled meats, peppers, salads, a lot of cheeses and pastries and yogurt. But Bulgaria has this really interesting mix of old and new because a lot of the wineries feel modern since there was a major investment in the wine industry there after the fall of communism, especially through EU funding and modernization products in the early 2000s. But at the same time, you still feel that Eastern European history everywhere, especially in the architecture. That contrast is really part of what makes Bulgaria so memorable. Next is the Rhone Valley. Northern and Southern Rhone feel like two completely different wine regions. Northern Rhone is dramatic. There are really steep vineyards and terraces and winding roads. Syrah is planted on impossibly steep hillsides overlooking the river. And when you're driving through places like Hermitage or Corrugty, you're just thinking, how are these people farming by hand? I don't get it. But in the Southern Rhone, it's going to feel completely different. It's warmer and more Mediterranean with a lot of olive trees and lavender, just like big open landscapes. The villages are going to feel sleepier and slower in the best way. And this is one of the regions where planning matters a lot. You really want to group your wineries geographically because distances can be deceptive and you just don't want to spend your whole trip driving these tiny winding roads between appointments. Food wise, the region is incredible for duck, lamb, olive tapenade, charcuterie, roasted vegetables, and really herby Provençal flavors everywhere. This is a region where long lunches and slow afternoons make the experience way better. Next is Sicily. There's volcanic wines, ancient vineyards, seafood everywhere, and a huge food culture. And the energy there is incredible because wine still feels deeply connected to daily life. You can combine beach, a tour of a volcano, winery, seafood lunches, ancient ruins, and beautiful towns all in one trip. I also recommend staying in Palermo, which has this chaotic, energetic atmosphere and incredible street food, nightlife, cool markets, just easy access to all the different coastlines depending on where you drive. And you can find all kinds of beaches, sandy, rocky coves, dramatic cliff sides, and even black volcanic beaches. Visit the lesser known region of Acate for some fantastic wine producers, especially if you want to break from the more touristy kind of parts of Sicily. And honestly, one of the best parts is just slowing down afterward on this coastal long drive. Even the thermal baths and natural hot springs are scattered across the island. Lastly, Margaret River, Australia. This region surprised me more than anywhere I've ever been. It has this incredible combination of world class wine, beaches, forests, casual seafood spots, and it's the only wine trip that I would take a toddler. Well, my daughter was 6 when we went in January in their summer, and they just welcomed her with open arms. There were playgrounds and slip and slides out back, and she just loved it. And unlike some wine regions that feel overly formal or snobby, Margaret River still is feeling really approachable. We didn't need many reservations, and we were blown away by their white blends that had Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon, along with the Cabernet and Syrah. But it was nothing like the big Shiraz you're thinking from like Barossa or McLaren Vale. Food wise, expect incredible seafood, a lot of oysters and fresh coastal cooking. The one thing I loved about Margaret River is that it feels genuinely modern. You have serious wine quality without the heaviness or pretension that some older wine regions can have. So, what I love about wine travel is that every region is going to teach you something different, whether it's farming or history, soil, climate, or just slowing down, right? Because the best wine trips aren't about tasting the best wines, most expensive, hard to find wines. They're about discovering places that you never want to leave. So, tell me below in the comments what's the best wine region you've ever visited? And if you want to know how I organize my wine trips, click on this video next.